Hi friends, cold open today. It's Dave, your host. I wanted to pop in before this episode and say that we're trying something a little new today. Today's episode will be what we're calling a WRA mini pod. It will be less of a detailed explanation on a more complex topic and more of a quick 101 to keep you in the loop, perfect for whenever you have free time throughout the day. We want to bring you more information in a digestible format about the most relevant issues we're dealing with in the West, and this is one way to do that. So hopefully you enjoy, and if you do, please do let us know at our email, outreach@westernresources.org. Enjoy today's episode on electric vehicle battery recycling. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm willing to bet you are looking for solutions to climate change and pollution in the West. You probably already recycle, reuse grocery bags, and avoid single-use plastic, and maybe you even drive an EV to minimize your environmental impact. Reducing our dependence on polluting practices is a great first step for caring for the environment. Similarly, the transition to zero-emission vehicles is a key strategy to fight back against climate change. Countless studies have proven that over the life cycle of the vehicle, EVs greatly reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, and they allow us to build a cleaner, more affordable, and more resilient economy. But did you know that there's a way to make this sustainable technology even better for the West? We can do this by ensuring EV batteries have a second life. Unlike our traditional vehicle, the battery that powers an EV can be reused or repurposed once the vehicle reaches the end of its life. And in an instance where a battery can't be reused or repurposed, we can recover the critical minerals within, rare earth minerals like lithium or cobalt, which can then be recycled almost indefinitely. And even better, WRA is working within our region to advance forward-thinking policies to make EV battery second life applications as effective, economical, and efficient as possible. I got a chance to chat with one of WRA's policy experts who is helping to lead this initiative. On today's shorter episode of 2 Degrees Out West, learn all about the circular EV battery economy and what it could mean for the future of the West.
My name is Deborah Kaploff, and I'm a Transportation Electrification Policy Advisor at Western Resource Advocates.
Deborah Kaploff works for WRA to advance clean transportation goals in the West. She pays a lot of attention to EVs and how they can reshape our economic dependence on carbon.
And so my role is to advocate for policies to help decarbonize the transportation sector with a focus on the electrification of light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles. What that means in my day-to-day work is that I am in venues like state legislatures, public utilities commissions, and air regulatory boards and agencies to shape and advocate for those policies.
The first thing I wanted to understand better about EV batteries is just how long they last. Deborah explained.
I think a lot of people think of them as like your 12-volt car battery, where like maybe one day it's really cold and you try to start your car and that battery is just dead and you're like, oh no, okay, well it's time to take this battery out. An EV battery is extremely different in that it generally will outlast the lifetime of the actual vehicle or how long you own that vehicle. There's some slight degradation of the battery that happens the more you drive it, and that's dependent on a lot of things like the temperature you're storing the vehicle in, kind of the use cycles of your vehicle, the recharge and discharge cycles and how you're charging it. But generally, like there's a degradation curve for lithium ion batteries. And so they'll degrade slightly, generally around like they'll lose like 5% of their capacity after around 50,000 miles. And then around 10% of their capacity will be lost after 150 to 200,000 miles. So like my electric vehicle has a range of 272 miles. That's the EPA range. And so if I were to drive it 200,000 miles, I would probably have a range that is 90% of that original range figure, again, depending on a lot of factors.
It works less like the batteries in your mouse or remote and more like the battery in your smartphone. Because of this, she said that right now there's not a lot of dead or degraded EV batteries in the system.
So we're really not seeing a large number of these batteries that are coming out of cars right now, but we know that down the road in a couple of years and decades, as earlier EV models are starting to retire or have batteries that have degraded to the extent where replacement batteries are needed for that vehicle, we will be seeing that.
So, what happens to old EV batteries now?
Right now, it really depends. Like, technically, in federal law, lithium ion batteries are categorized as hazardous waste. And so there are regulations about how they should be handled and how they should be transported and disposed if it comes to that. The guidance on the federal level is kind of unclear about whether this lithium ion battery regulation applies to EV batteries. It really was promulgated for like small and medium format lithium ion batteries. So like the stuff that powers like your household electronics. And obviously like an EV battery is a huge battery. It weighs thousands of pounds. And so the needed policy framework for those batteries is very different than from like household appliances and electronics that are battery powered. And so that's one of the reasons it's so important to be putting this policy into place at the state level, because we have not seen the necessary guidance at the federal level.
The new policies Deborah is working on are proactive and could usher in some exciting economic opportunities. Deborah said that EV battery recycling presents an opportunity for something called a circular economy.
A circular economy is really just a system in which when a product is created, at the end of that product's life, the materials from that product are recovered and then reused to make either that product again or another product. So instead of a product at the end of its life going to a landfill and then the materials that were used to make that product having kind of the end of their life be in a landfill where they slowly decompose or maybe don't decompose, they're actually being recovered and then used again. And so when you draw out what that looks like, you get a circle.
She elaborated on some of the benefits of that circular economy.
You are generating less waste. We obviously know that landfilling is something that can have negative environmental impacts, as well as landfills can be a really potent source of methane gas, which we don't want being released into the atmosphere. When you recover resources and reuse them, first of all, the steps to do that can create economic opportunity and jobs, especially in those communities where the resources are being recovered from. Also, when you eventually reuse those materials in either the same or another product, the environmental impact of those resources that and materials that you're reusing is significantly lower because they haven't had to be extracted newly or fabricated again.
This is all great and fairly intuitive. It's a message that we've heard since middle school: reduce, reuse, and recycle. How does this impact EV batteries?
What it means is that their batteries are going to be coming out of those vehicles, and then if there is policy in place, those batteries can go on to have really great second lives, either being used in other mobility applications or being used in other applications like energy storage, or potentially if they're not of the correct quality for those second life applications, those EV batteries can be recycled to make either new EV batteries or other products that utilize the same critical minerals that are recovered from those EV batteries.
EV batteries are great candidates for recycling. Deborah explained just how recyclable the critical minerals within the battery can be.
Some of the higher end, more technologically capable recycling processes can recover upwards of 90% of the critical minerals in a battery. And obviously that varies on the exact critical mineral. and also the condition of the battery when they get it. But it's a very high percentage of critical minerals that can be extracted from an EV battery if high quality recycling processes are used. And so I think those recovery rates are really, really exciting, especially when you think about the fact that technology is getting more and more efficient and progressing so that we potentially need less of these minerals in future EV batteries. Being able to recover so many of those minerals can really put a dent in the need for new resource extraction to supply those materials.
It's been estimated that if all EV batteries are recycled between now and 2050, and the critical minerals are reused, it could reduce the need for mining by up to 64%. Recycling these materials over and over can ease our reliance on foreign powers for minerals. Many of the benefits Deborah explained to me come from that circular economy concept that she relayed earlier.
The benefits are obviously having those circular economies set up so that creates jobs, generally domestically. So you have the folks that are retrieving these batteries and then working in the battery recycling facilities and breaking them down and extracting the materials from them, and then potentially also refining those materials if needed so that they are usable again. Those are all job opportunities, and those tend to be high quality family supporting jobs. Beyond that, having a stable supply of these critical minerals, especially when so much of the sourcing for them comes from areas of the world that can be a little bit volatile, or if you're thinking about like permitting a new mine, that can be a very extensive and expensive process. So having a supply of these minerals, I kind of refer to them as like secondhand or like thrifted minerals, is something that can give a lot of confidence to auto manufacturers that they will have a supply of these things that are needed to make EV batteries.
Deborah told me it's very forward thinking. She says WRA is leading the way on EV battery recycling in the West.
I think what's really exciting about the legislative efforts that we're working on in some of WRA's states is that they really set up a framework that indicates to recyclers and all of the industry players in the EV battery recycling space that this is something that is wanted and really gives them that economic certainty that when EV batteries reach the end of their life, they will be going to recyclers or to other reuse or remanufacturing applications if they're in good enough shape for that. And so that's really exciting because we want to get all those facilities set up and ensure that there's enough capacity for the coming number of EV batteries that will come offline in the next couple of years and decades.
This policy Deborah is working on to advance has thought a lot about potential hangups with EV batteries and how we can overcome them. She explained some of the challenges the legislation would overcome.
I think something that is challenging with this policy is just the amount of coordination that's needed between all of the parties that are involved, as well as all the different interests of those parties. So, for example, generally, like if you're having a problem with your car, you'll probably drive it to a dealership or an independent auto mechanic and see if they can help you. And let's say that they determine that your EV battery has reached the end of its life and they're going to remove it. They might not have the expertise to be able to properly handle that battery, much less to determine whether they can sell that battery for reuse or if it needs to be sent to recycling. And so we really want to avoid any situation where someone has removed an EV battery and just doesn't know what to do with it or might improperly dispose of it. And so the policy framework that we've been working on and supporting in our states establishes kind of a chain of command for who is responsible for an EV battery to ensure that none of them are slipping through the cracks. And anytime there is like an auto mechanic who is like, oh, I took this EV battery out and I don't know what to do with it now, they know exactly who to call, and that person is responsible for coordinating with them and ensuring that that EV battery is appropriately handled and gets to a place where it can be recycled. It's a policy that can be implemented across multiple states, and it honestly makes a lot of sense to have a common framework that multiple states adopt, just because when you're dealing with like auto manufacturers and like the Auto Recycling Association and some of these players that do have footprints that are multi-state or national, they really want policy consistency and a policy that makes sense and that can be implemented broadly. And given the lack of guidance and movement on this topic at the federal level, this is something that WRA has been leading on in our states. We are working on legislation with this same policy framework in New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado. And something that's been very exciting is that our draft legislative text has been picked up as a model in states outside of our region. So I was actually recently notified that there is a group working in Washington state that are using the framework that WRA is working on in our states. And so this is, I think, a really great opportunity for states in the absence of strong leadership at the federal level to put into place important policies. And there's a real synergy between multiple states putting in the same policy in the next couple of years. There are just a lot of different parties in this space that all have slightly different interests. And so when you can harmonize those to get to a policy solution that works for everyone, after months and months of conversations and going back and forth with red lines on exact language, that's something that other states are very interested in working off of. So it's really nice to see all the meticulous stakeholding and drafting work that we've been doing be able to have a life outside of WRA states as well.
So what's next? Well, Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico could all pass EV battery legislation this session.
In New Mexico, a bill, House Bill 310, sponsored by Representative Cristina Ortiz, has been introduced. And then in Colorado and Nevada, the session timelines are a bit different. And so we are expecting those bills to be introduced in early to mid-March. And then once they are introduced, we can attach bill numbers to them and let WRA supporters know if they want to monitor those bills.
EV battery second life applications present some exciting opportunities for how we could build a clean energy economy that's forward-thinking and makes the West a better place to live. It's an opportunity to learn from the past and build a better future. If you want to learn more about what WRA is doing in state legislatures and our efforts to advance forward-thinking policies that protect the West, you can join our email list. We'll provide opportunities for you to take action and updates on how our bills, like these ones in New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado, are doing. Thank you for listening to this shorter edition of 2 Degrees Out West. If you enjoyed it, let us know by emailing us at outreach@westernresources.org. You can find all of our show notes, a full transcription of this episode, and further resources to learn about EV battery recycling in the West at westernresourceadvocates.org. Lastly, WRA would like to thank our sponsors who make this work possible. Our impact sponsor is First Bank. Our premier sponsor is Vision Ridge Partners. Our supporting sponsors are BSW Wealth Partners, GoCo, Group 14 Engineering, Jones & Co., Meridian Public Affairs, and SolUp. Thank you for listening.